It's the late 1980s. A coastal parking lot in Florida. A photo appears. Two youths, hands bound, tape across their mouths. 1,000 miles away, a mother studies the face of the boy on the left and says, "I know that jawline." Investigators study the same rectangle of paper and answer, "We can't say who this is." From that moment, a neighborhood case acquires national gravity. Photographs, affidavits, and a widening gap between belief and verification. This is the Midnight Mystery Archive, and this is part 2 of the Johnny Gosch case. After the morning we mapped out in part 1, September 5th, 1982, the file on Johnny's case doesn't narrow. In fact, it fans out, and wide. Within months, Johnny's case is not just a West Des Moines file. It's appearing in regional newscasts, syndicated segments, later magazine shows, and on missing child posters distributed far beyond Iowa. That visibility has 3 predictable effects: an influx of new leads. The volume of tips rises dramatically. Eyewitness memories arrive contaminated by the coverage, which investigators must then scrub for anything that wasn't learned from TV or a newspaper. Cross-case echo. Details from other investigations begin to echo in caller stories about Johnny. Similarities in method or victimology can be coincidental or meaningful, but parsing which is which takes time and discipline. Artifact magnetism. Physical artifacts, especially photographs, gain outsized power. A picture that might have earned a paragraph in a local report now draws national argument. Who is it? Where was it taken? Does it solve anything? Or does it promise to solve something? That is the stage on which the 2 pillars of Part 2 stand: the photographs and the affidavits. A widely reported image surfaces in a Florida town in the late 1980s. 2 youths posed, bound, and gagged. The photograph is turned over to law enforcement. Copies circulate among media and families of missing children whose age and build roughly match. Why the photo matters in this case? Family members, most prominently Johnny's mother, Noreen Gosch, identify facial landmarks that align with Johnny as he would have looked years after his disappearance. Analysts examine the image. Public statements stop short of conclusive identification. Neither youth in the image is publicly definitively named by authorities. The photo becomes a proxy for hard questions. Could Johnny be alive? Could he be the boy in this frame? What investigators ask of a still photograph are the edge codes in film stock. Film manufacturers emboss edge numbers or symbols that can date a stock to a production window. That doesn't necessarily date the exposure, but it gives a no earlier than bracket. Generational loss. Is the print first generation from a negative or a copy of a copy? Each step adds noise, softens detail investigators need, like skin texture, hairlines, background signage. Then there's lighting and shadows. Shadow length, angle, and diffusion can hint at time of day and light source. Not proof, but one more slider to adjust when testing scenarios. Then there's the background forensics. Tiny clues, wall textures, panel seams, fabric patterns, screw types. Can place a photo in a region, a kind of vehicle, or a building type. This is painstaking and often inconclusive, but sometimes it does pay off. Comparative morphology. Families see faces with high confidence. Forensic comparison leans on proportions, eye spacing to nose width, philtrum length, ear helix shape. The more a child has aged since the last known photo, the harder this gets. In the public record, these tools did not yield a definitive answer for the Florida image. Years later, additional photos, some mailed, some circulated, enter the discourse. Boys posed in ways consistent with coercion. Other boys who predate Johnny's disappearance. Photos whose dates and contexts are argued by the senders or by families. These two are examined. None becomes legally dispositive for this case. What do we know about these pictures? For a fact, a photograph of two bound youths surfaced and was obtained by law enforcement. No public conclusive identification of either youth has been entered into the record. There's the claim, family recognition of facial features identifying one youth as Johnny. Assertions that later photos depict related victims and tie to a larger pattern. What is unknown, the true identities of the youths in those images, where and when each photo was taken, whether any image documents crime victims or staged material unrelated to this file. Photographs can re-energize a case, generate tips, reopen files, justify new resources. But without source, chain of custody, and corroboration, they sit in the file as leads, not answers. In Johnny's case, the photos widened attention and deepened division. On one side, recognition. On the other, the discipline of "we can't say." The second pillar on which Part 2 is built is sworn statements, most prominently those of Paul Bonacci. Over multiple interviews and sworn filings, he described a network involved in abducting and transporting minors, a role in events surrounding Johnny's disappearance, specific methods, lures using directions, vehicle-based rapid removals, and movement across state lines. What gave these statements traction were intersections, moments where a detail seemed to sit near what the public already knew: a paper route, a corner, a car, a brief ask. Investigators, however, are trained to ask three questions of a late arriving narrative. Contamination risk. How much of the statement could have been absorbed from media and community retellings? The longer a case is public, the more available facts a storyteller can adopt, consciously or not. Internal consistency across time. Do the same details hold in separate interviews and separate years? Small drifts are human. Structural changes are red flags. External test points. Which elements could be checked against documents, travel logs, work rosters, or unpublicized details that only the offender would know? Bonacci's statements lead to a civil litigation in which a judgment is entered against a named defendant connected to an unrelated scandal. That outcome is often cited in the public conversation, so clarity is important. Civil results hinge on a preponderance standard and can result from non-appearance or procedural posture. They are not proof beyond a reasonable doubt and do not substitute for a criminal finding about Johnny's abduction. Within the investigative community, Bonacci's filings live in an ambivalent space. Parts of the story track with known methods and the Part 1 timeline. Parts contradict records or lack verifiable anchors. The file treats them as claims to be tested, not as established facts. Fact: sworn statements alleging abduction and transport exist. Parts reference Johnny's case. A civil judgment was entered in a related suit, but there has been no criminal conviction establishing those allegations as fact for this case. Claim: direct involvement in Johnny's abduction and the existence of a structured network operating across jurisdictions. What is unknown: independent corroboration sufficient for criminal standards, membership, scope, and operations of any alleged trafficking network as described. A man asked directions from a car window is a method. Who did it is authorship. Many offenders can use the same method across decades. So matching a claim to a method is not enough. The file needs place, time, person triangulation. Something that ties a named person to a location at a moment with evidence that survives cross-examination. So far, we've discussed the photos and the affidavits tied to this case. But there's one more interesting tidbit. Another persistent thread is Noreen Gosch's account of a late-night visit years after the disappearance from Johnny. In her telling, a young man introduced as Johnny arrives with another male, speaks briefly inside, and leaves, asking that police not be called. The narrative is consistent in broad strokes across her public remarks. Law enforcement commentary has been skeptical. There is no independent verification, no physical evidence captured at the time, no third-party witness who can fix the event independent of Noreen's memory, and no documentation able to convert the story into an investigative fact. This episode sits at the fault line of the case. A mother's certainty on one side, a file that does not change classification on the other. What we know as fact is the family has publicly reported a late-night visit involving a young man presented as Johnny. The claim is the visitor was Johnny, alive and making contact under coercive constraints, requesting police not be called as it could jeopardize his and others' lives. What is unknown is no independent evidence can fix identity, date, or context sufficient to add this event to the file as a corroborated fact. Across the late 1980s and 1990s, West Des Moines police and federal partners follow hundreds of leads, including those generated by the photos and affidavits. The official posture stays disciplined. Treat photographs as artifacts unless and until source, identity, and context are confirmed. Treat sworn statements as claims. Prioritize external test points over narrative coherence. Avoid endorsing broad conspiracy frameworks without granular corroboration. The public narrative, meanwhile, accelerates. National TV segments, books, and conferences recast Johnny's disappearance as symbol. For some, the emblem of a hidden structure. For others, a cautionary tale about the speed of speculation compared to the pace of evidence. The gap between belief and verification, visible in Part 1's first morning, widens here. Photographs linked to the case exist. That's unquestioned. But none has produced a public conclusive ID of Johnny or a verified context that moves the investigative needle from lead to proof. Affidavits alleging ring-based abduction exists. A civil judgment appears in the historical record, but no criminal conviction has established those allegations as fact for this case. The alleged late-night visit remains a family account without independent verification in the file. Investigators continue to separate methods that resemble the Part 1 morning from authorship that must be proven with place, time, and person evidence. These positions are not conclusions, they're current limits. The ring where the record ends and the conjecture begins. Part 2 is the widening circle. Photos that inflamed recognition but didn't resolve identity. Affidavits that promised coherence but couldn't clear evidentiary bars. A late-night encounter that sits between conviction and documentation. In Part 3, we'll go back to the ground, the two other Des Moines paperboy cases, what policy changed in the wake of this file, and where the Johnny Gosch investigation stands when you strip it back to what can still be tested today. This has been the Midnight Mystery Archive and Part 2 of the Johnny Gosch case. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on TikTok, where we talk a little bit more about the cases we cover in the podcast. Until next time.